Hello, everybody. Today I'm joined by Six More Vodkas, Marco and Erwin, and we're going to be sitting down and having a bit of a chat about who they are, where they've come from, and their unusual proposition for business model. So it's a pleasure to have you on the channel, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for calling us. Thank you for inviting us.
Well, once I got the opportunity, I wasn't going to let it slip past me. So I suppose the first thing people want to know is who are Six More Vodka, or what is Six More Vodka? Because it's not just a publishing company. I view it more like an art collective. But what do you call yourselves, or how do you portray yourselves?
Well, we've been around for quite some time. Like, the company itself is 11 years old, and we've been predominantly working as an outsourcing studio for video games and movies over the past 11 years. And this has been our bread and butter for, the founding years. We had a lot of artists on our team that worked together on large projects. The last one that we basically finished was Legends of Runeterra, which was released by Riot Games, and that was pretty much, for a very long time, that was our main business model and business structure. And Degenesis grew out of all of this as a side project first. We didn't necessarily always want to do client work only, and we needed an outlet that would allow us to be in charge of our own art direction, of our own skills, of our own ideas. And so Degenesis basically happened on the side first. It was like something that we all kind of considered as a hobby, as an outlet for our creativity to have a place to be collected within. And then out of that hobby, it became something more serious, something more exciting, with the growing community and with a growing player base, and our ideas and publications, coming out in spades. And we then figured out we want to make this more professional and put it into a new format, so to speak. That was the whole background of creating the game.
So Degenesis is the big game that people will have heard me wax idiotic about at length a few weeks ago on the Weekender. Yeah. But it's a relatively old game. It's 20 years old at this stage, and this is I want to say it's the third time that it's sort of been published, is more or less.
It's more or less the second time. Like the first edition had like an updated version of it, but like this was the Rebirth edition is the actual reboot. It's like the second edition, if you want that. And yeah, the game is really old. I originally created the game in my early 20s together with my friend Chris Günther, and we did that years prior, before I even had the idea of having my own company. We sat together like almost like a garage punk band and developed this world, because we always loved RPGs, and we always loved the idea of creating our own system and our own role-playing game, so to speak. And we published that back in 2003, and only in German back then. Just didn't have access to any international publishing, or had even a clue of how to do a translation into English. Yeah, I mean, the game was an underground success. It was like some sort of a cult hit, but we, being extremely young back then, didn't know how to handle the property. So the property kind of meandered along and withered away over the years, with Chris and I going separate ways, doing our own things, me focusing more on art, he focusing more on programming. And years later, I think around 2012, I took a look at the old forums, and there were still active people playing it. And I just couldn't believe there was still, demand for the game, and that people still loved what we had produced as, in our early twins. And then we decided, I decided to call Chris and I was like, what about we just relaunch this thing from scratch and we go back to the original ideas that we had when we were like 23, 24, and we look at how we can professionalize this thing. And by that time, I already had our company. And so we could do it under a new label with a different budget, with a different level of professionalism. And he agreed to it. Was really excited about the idea. And then we joined forces together 10 years later and recreated Degenesis Rebirth.
Do you both have a sort of background in gaming? Were you always gamers growing up? Or is this just a melding of your company into something that you wanted to bring forward?
I used to be an RPG gamer for a very long time in my teenage years. Like I started playing at 13 and I think I played extensively from 13 to 21 or 22 approximately. But then eventually, my friends moved to different cities to study and I lost my group. And then, the fascination with creating RPGs became bigger than the fascination of actually playing RPGs. I saw it more as a creative outlet for myself to like bundle my ideas and put them into words or put them into pictures and develop a world that can be played by and enjoyed by other people. So that was the original drive and motivation behind it. I myself, I haven't played in I think 20 years at this point.
You've other things to sink your time into. What about yourself, Erwin? Are you a gamer or?
Yeah, I started playing when I was, again, like I say, as Marco, when I was a teenager, and I got into it accidentally, actually. I was looking for comics, and one of my favorite IP was releasing their version of a tabletop RPG, and I thought it was a comic, so I picked it up, and then I realized it was not a comic at all, and I started understanding that it was actually meant to be played. So that's how I got into it, and then I started playing with at the local store with other people, mostly adults, and they were playing Vampire the Masquerade back then. So that was the first time I was playing, and then after that, I discovered other games the classics, Warhammer, Polaris. I never played D&D. I mostly played like those very grimdark game with like a lot of emphasis on the role-playing and the relationship between the characters and the motivations of the characters. So that was for like 6 or 7 years, that was how I played. And then I discovered Degenesis in 2015. A friend of mine that was playing Warhammer with was like, hey, dude, I think I found something that you're really going to like. And he sent me the Degenesis website from back then. I was like, oh my God, that's the best RPG I've ever seen. I need to order it.
Yeah. So this is an ideal time then. Obviously, Degenesis is a unique little setting of its own, but how would you describe it to people?
There's a lot of factors that you could use to describe it. There's a lot of descriptors, there's a lot of genres that influenced it, but like in general, we tend to call it a primal punk game. People translate that as a post-apocalyptic game where the apocalypse has happened 500 years ago, and people are still recovering from the event, but like it's like the apocalyptic event itself is not the major threat anymore. It's all the aftermath of it. So that is the Genesis in a nutshell.
The thing that fascinated me when I was first sent the link, like yourself, Erwin, I was sent the link to your new website, which isn't particularly old at this stage either.
It's 1 year old.
1 year old.
The new one is 1 year.
I think I don't know whether or not this was set up this way, but when one of our community members sent me the link, I think it was just hit 1 year old at that stage, and I was blown away by what was on it. Just the sheer depth and volume.
That was the whole purpose behind the website. We wanted to build an online encyclopedia of the game that people can enjoy whether or not they're playing the game or buying the books. Like, we had so much material and so many ideas, so many sketches that were lying around that we needed to format into something that people can enjoy on a train or while they're waiting for a doctor's appointment and browse on their phone and read stories and get engaged and involved with the world. And that was the whole concept behind the website. It has an encyclopedial approach and appeal to it, but not in a way like Wikipedia would structure it, where one topic leads to the next. It's more like an exploration kind of thing, like you dive in, you check a culture that interests you, and then you see parts of that culture like unfolding in front of you. It's not supposed to give you, an additional or a complete understanding of the world, but more of an additional primer to the world itself.
Well, I mean, in many respects, it's like setting somebody down in front of Google and going, okay, tell me everything about everybody on Earth right now.
Yeah.
It's a monumental task, although I've noticed you've more or less tried to cover everything about everybody on Earth right now in your game. So it's the timeline has been added recently as well. So people can actually jump in and start going through the history as well.
Yeah. But what it allows us also is, for example, I mean, we're always restricted to page count when we produce a book, and we're restricted to deadline as well. And sometimes there's a scene or a story or a part of the book that we really like, but we just lack the time or the budget to create an illustration for it. So a few months later, we can like go back, look at that particular piece that is already published, and then recreate a new image for it and update the story and post it on the website and integrate it into the greater scope of the world. So it really allows us to keep on exploring elements that we have already published and just add on top of that. It's like icing on the cake.
Talking about the publishing side of things, once I looked at this, I had to own it. So I picked up VOV, and the quality of the book, well, the books, I suppose, because it's a double volume, was mind-blowing. I mean, like a boutique, handcrafted piece of work. It was just stunning. And then when you're looking at it and you realize that it's all free to play, it's completely available. And normally when you see things like that from companies, it's missing the artwork or it's just the text or that sort of thing. But you've got a very different business model with how you're developing Degenesis and pushing it forward, where all of the myriad of books and stories that are published online are there in their entirety, and the funding is to get them on the website and get them published in that sphere, and then worry about actual physical product for people who want it afterwards. That must have been a dramatic shift to take, to move away from a published physical.
Actually, it wasn't. I kid you not. The idea was born relatively early. It just took us years to find the right way to do it. What happened when we published Degenesis as a PDF in English in 2015 was that it took like 13 minutes for the PDF to show up on 4chan. Like I had like the counter next to me, and like the piracy went through the roof, like instantly. Yeah. And I mean, there's literally nothing you can do. You can't even fault these guys. I mean, they're excited. They want to see something new. They want to decide if they want to buy something. And what are you going to do? And on the other hand, we know that the quality of the product will convince anyone that actually sees the product. We've seen it every time we went to a convention and sold books in front of people. We sold out. Like we've only done like 2 or 3 conventions in the last years, but every time somebody actually sees the books, they just buy them right away. So we know we have nothing to hide. There's nothing for us to gain from keeping a gate around the property. And so we decided relatively early, we want to go free to play. We just didn't know how to do it. We lacked the technology and we lacked the ability to build the website the way it's built right now. And so that was a lot of research. I think we spent from 2018 to like the end of 2019 trying to even find the right programmers to work with. And we had like 3 prototypes of the website that we trashed entirely just because they just didn't do what we wanted the website to do. And then we were really lucky at the end of 2019 to find the programming studio that we built the current website with, and we became partners with them, and they're an amazing team, and they were able to visualize everything that we wanted the website to be. So they were capable of taking our free-to-play model to the next level and actually establishing it as what it is right now. And that was for us. Then, you know, it wasn't even a decision that needed to be made. Like, we just knew that this was the route for us to go, because we know what the quality of the books itself is. You know, like, anybody that has a chance to see them will eventually buy them. And we see our sales going up since we went free to play. Finally, anybody can download it, and that means it's just distributed on a much broader fashion to much more people. And there's a lot more people who are then willing to, you know, spend the money and own the product, because the product is such high quality.
I suppose that's the big thing about it, is getting it in front of people. These days with social media is sort of taking over from the old style of picking up your gaming magazine once a month. So if people aren't already in a certain bubble or within a circle, then it's difficult to get it in front of them. So having it available on the internet, having the website as it is, means that it's freely accessible, and then that word of mouth starts to spread. But it sort of snowballs from there.
Exactly. I mean, it's an exposure thing at this point, you know, like the more people actually get their hands on it, the bigger our sales are. And we've been pushing that agenda for the past year and a half almost, because we really believe that, you know, there's no reason for you not to want the books. If you actually just look at the books and you compare them to anything that you have in your bookshelf from other publishers, you're going to be like,
I have
possible.
I've compared them to many. I've compared them to books I spent a lot more on for role-playing games, and it was like, I wonder if I can return this thing from 20 years ago now. I don't think I will, mind you. Can we talk about the roadmap then? Because this is the most intriguing part of the whole Degenesis Six More Vodka plan, because it's a roadmap to fund upcoming supplemental books and material that then eventually can become physical products. But within it, it seems like you've built this, well, just bring it up here. It seems like you've built out almost like a storyline, so that people can look at it and see, you know, here we have these books that either cover clans or areas or stories. Is this the ongoing model for the rest of the year, and then will it develop and change, or will everything just sort of keep rolling on from here? Do you have sort of a continuous map planned out?
I mean, the roadmap is really an experiment. It's a way for us to gauge the demand of the community. If the community says they want more products, they can help fund the products, and they can jolt the products into action. If you look at the amount of funding per item, per roadmap item, it's a very small amount. If you consider how much production cost we put up front into these projects, it's more of a primer for us in terms of gauging if the demand is there for us to go and put another piece or another product out on the market. And then once we see it funded, we see that there is, you know, a community demand that we need to, you know, work towards, and we feel also more motivated to bring out a new product, because we see the excitement, we see the hype, we see that people are kind of waiting for something new to appear, and that helps us really in terms of how we communicate with the community. That helps us to gauge their interest and see where things are supposed to head. And the way it's broken down and structured right now, this is just like our first year where we're trying it out. It's basically our experimental field. If this works out, we think it can be extrapolated into 2022 or 2023 and have a completely different outlook. But this is what we're working with right now, and we're just gauging what the community really wants, what they're getting excited about. And since the booklets are smaller than the actual books, we can produce them much faster and can experiment around shift gears from 1 month to the next and keep our own discipline towards the production value relatively high.
I suppose it almost feels like in this day of the sort of Netflix and Amazon and the like, that you have people picking up subscriptions for TV streaming services, and they may not actually watch most of the stuff that's on there. So it's interesting that you've done something similar with an RPG where people can essentially fund over the course of time additional books, because especially within the RPG industry, unless you are a big company like I was going to say Wizards of the Coast, but they don't own Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Whoever owns Dungeons and Dragons. Unless you've got that money behind you and you're putting out a book every 6 months, or a major book comes out once a year, you don't really see things for RPG worlds, and certainly not the smaller independent games. They just can't afford to do it. But this shows that there is the thirst, the hunger there amongst the player base for constant content over time. Maybe they don't want a 200-page book once a year, but a 20 to 30-page book every couple of months. They do want, and it's something that they can play through and progress with. So do you see almost like using that as a way to push Degenesis and the storyline forward, where you're not having to worry about monumental, here's a book because something monumental and cataclysmic has happened. Instead, you can go, here is this year, and then 6 months down the line, maybe you move it on another year, or you take another geographic location into account, and just sort of gradually push the world that way.
I think it's 2 points, actually. I think it's 2 points. The first point is, every time we did a book before going over to the roadmap, we escalated the amount of pages that the book entailed. So last publication that we did, last big publication that we did was Justician, which is a source book of 600 pages. It took me 2 years to put that thing together because it's just so massive. It has over I don't know, it's like close to like 300 illustrations or something. It's just incredibly exhausting to produce. And it's also a time span that you have to keep the community occupied. They're waiting 2 years for something to be revealed, and then by the time the book comes out, they need 3 months to read it. Like, it's just nonsensical, and it's not sustainable for a small team like us. If there's only like one author, one editor, and 2 illustrators and a producer involved, like, you just go, like, you're in Hell's Kitchen if you're trying to produce big books. The small stuff is much more sustainable. It's like you can schedule it out to be done, to produce a 32-page booklet within 4 to 6 weeks max, and then deliver something new to the community. The community can read it relatively quickly. It doesn't take them a huge amount of time, like maybe 1 day, 2 days to process the information, and they can instantly use it at the gaming table, or motivate themselves for whatever they want to do with their own groups. So that is point one. And then the second point is, we've produced so much high quality work over the years. The community knows where we want to go, and they're sharing their trust in us by letting us do the smaller booklets now. They're believing in our vision for the game, and they're helping us fund these small booklets by contributing with their donations. And it helps us to really feel motivated to give back to the community and like keep the interval high, make sure that new stuff is constantly coming out, and that people are satisfied with what they're waiting for. Because the world keeps on expanding, but now it keeps expanding in smaller iterations.
I suppose also the community aspect is very big. The Discord community, I can't focus on the Discord community. It moves so fast.
Yeah.
And they're always in there offering their ideas or doing their own sort of fan art or scenarios or whatever it is. Do you use much of that access, I suppose is the best way to put it, to filter what you want to do next, or what may be coming up, or as things sort of set in stone that you don't want? Once people get the game, it becomes their game and they can change it any way they want, I suppose is the thing. So do you take a lot of feedback on board in advance, or do you go, here is what we have given you, and then if you want to change that afterwards, that's fine? But
Erwan, do you want to talk about the community?
I mean, do we listen to the community? Yes. Can the community do whatever it wants with the game? In general, yes. The thing we've observed through time both as a former community member and now as a producer, is that people are very anxious about changing, steering away from the canon of the game. So Degenesis being so oriented towards its bigger story and the big plots and the major arcs makes people sometimes be very scared of moving away from that. So what tends to happen is that people will make their own proposition about where they would like their own game to go, and they will do it. And then as soon as we do a release on that specific region, or if we move the storyline forward and it completely destroys what they were doing, well, they have to live with it. And some of them do that. And then once they do a next campaign, they adapt with what we've written, which I think is fine. And I think that's how it should be done. It's like people should not be afraid of diverging away or taking the world and making it their own. Of course, if you want to always be canon, that's a lot of work. I mean, I can't lie, it's a lot of work. You need to make sure that you understand what you're playing, where you're playing, who you're including in your game. But I think that's the same thing with most of the games. If whatever game you play where the world is essential to the understanding of this specific game, then there's always a risk that you're going to make something that the author were not planning it for you to do, or that you're going to make the world yours by adding characters that are not exactly in the flavor of the world. But that's tabletop RPG, as soon as you buy it, it's yours to mess with. And then the only thing is, then you have to accept that you're not necessarily canon anymore. And once you're fine with it, I think the experience is the best. But you should not feel like because the author decided to move it forward, then suddenly you're wrong and you can't play anymore, and the game is donezo. It's not the case. Like you just need to accept it.
Was the I suppose so many people these days go to crowdfunding websites, the likes of Indiegogo, Kickstarter, what have you. Do you ever envisage a point where you may look at something like that for a larger project, or do you want to stay within your sort of own remit and focus on the model that you're developing with the Degenesis and the roadmaps currently? Because
I mean, the only reason why we're doing it the way we're doing it is because we have all the control over it. We can decide how to update this properly. We have all the, everything is kind of bundled within the website. The website is it's like the core of the game, and then everything spreads out from there. It's where you go to download the books. It's where you go to create your character. It's where you go to read up on a certain story or check the history. And so it just came natural for us to include the entire roadmap funding system into the website, because it's such an integral part of the game. It basically bundles everything together. If we would have done Kickstarter, we would have had to provide what we're now doing on the website over at Kickstarter, which would just lead to a lot more work for us, because it's not centralized anymore. And
sure.
that is the main reason why we chose that particular business route. Kickstarter is an amazing platform. I'm not gonna lie, I see a lot of stuff being funded there. I see a lot of good stuff coming out of it. The main reason for us to venture away from it is because we think that it provides a structure that is not the structure that we need to be able to present our stuff. And to be able to present our stuff properly and in the design and in the visual language that we want to present it with, it needs to be coupled with the way we've established Degenesis.com to work. And that helps us, to push stuff forward. It's just really the way we work internally that has led to the business model far more than, somebody that doesn't have, a huge website that presents their game. They will probably profit from Kickstarter much more because they can use all the tools that are available to them through that particular site already. And
Kickstarter is mostly, from my point of view, it's a huge marketing tool, but it's a very good way to exactly do what it says, to kickstart your presence on the online in an online form.
Sure.
You get access to a lot of people, you get access to a huge community and newsletter and all these things that give you the visibility that you know that you want and you need. But it's a one-time shot. If you miss it, then it's done. Like you have 1 month or maybe 2 months to get everything funded, and it's a massive effort. Like it's a constant effort for 2 months where every day you have to go around and ask for people to talk about your game, and you need to update people, and on a much smaller scale, that's what we do with the roadmap. But the good thing is we don't have to have everybody fund in this one specific month. We can say, okay, if you cannot give money right now, but if you want to support in 2 months, 3 months down the line, you can do it. The roadmap will still be there. And even if the roadmap is funded, you can still send money and we will use it properly to develop more stuff afterwards. So this is, we are a bit hype averse in a way. Like we don't want the huge spikes of hype and then everything is dead for like a long time, and you have a lot of silent work to do. We prefer when everything kind of stable,
keeping
and
that level of consistency there in the releases also means that you've got that steady growth as well, rather than, like you say, the big spikes. I have to say that the production quality, not just in the book format, because the books, the free PDFs are all exceptional, but the production quality across the website is a whole other level, even down to the stories. Some of them have audio tracks with them narrating them, or the trailers that have been done for various books and teasers coming up like that. Do you see that whole multimedia aspect becoming more important for companies like yourself, where you want to stand out from the crowd and you want to shine a light on your product, and the way to do that is to not just focus on one aspect, being just the books, the story, and then the rules, but actually going, here's our world, and here's how you can experience it in various ways?
Let me answer that as a creative director. I come from an illustrator background, and before I wrote, I would only paint. And the way I learned illustration was to paint the things that the text could not describe. And then later on, when I became an author, I would write the things that the pictures cannot show. And I see multimedia I look at multimedia in the same way. An audio story does something different than just reading a story, and a trailer does something different than just looking at pictures. It's a merger of ideas, and it opens new windows into understanding the world. And for me, that particular transmedia part is an absolute key factor of Degenesis. I love that part the most. It's where we get the most creative and where we can explore the most and try things out that nobody else is doing out on the market, because we just really see that there's just so much opportunity to tell exciting things in that respect, and that's why I love doing it. That's why I think it's a key part of how we're developing the IP and how we're developing the world and the entire user experience around it.
Well,
I don't think it's necessary. It's necessary for a game to have all of that.
No.
You can live without it, and there's amazing games. Like I love RuneQuest more than anything, but it doesn't have that.
No, it does not. No.
So it's not necessary, but it's a nice to have for us.
Yeah. I suppose, unless there's anything else that you are burning to get off your chest, we could start wrapping this up. And normally at this point, I would ask, what's next for Degenesis? Well, what's next for your company? Where are you going to go from here? But it's all planned out in the roadmap. So it's a very easy answer for once. But is there any big plans for 2022? Do you have anything sort of burning away in the background, or is it more the same?
There is a new book in the works for 2022, which is more of a massive, front loader. But like we'll release new infos throughout the year. Right now, we're focusing on the roadmap. What I'm curious about, like, how did you stumble into us, and what were your thoughts? Like how did it all happen?
I got a message from one of our community members, Simon. He goes by Elysium. I believe he goes by Elysium on your Discord as well. And he went, there's a really interesting company you should take a look at for an Indie of the Week. I think it would be right up your street. And then he proceeded to, in a wall of text, explain roughly that Degenesis was a thing. You should have a look at it. It's all free to play. Here's some trailers. Here's some people unboxing stuff. Definitely, you should go and have it. Poke with stick. And so he shunted me onto the website, and I immediately fell in love with the art, because I am just drawn to really, really beautiful art, whether it's miniature or illustrations. And then I started looking into the detail of the story and the world that was built, and it was almost overwhelming. So I immediately went and bought the biggest book I could find, because I the way I parse information, I'm much better at doing it with a physical book in my hand than scrolling through. Obviously, some people are much better with digital. But I was blown away by that. And then when I started getting into the actual website itself, it was just how perfectly it had been laid out. The ease of which you could start finding things when you went looking for them, and you're going, okay, well, I want to know more about the world, so click on the world, and there's the universe, and here's a timeline, here's maps. And it was like a rabbit hole where everything I clicked on just drew me further and further in, so much so that I'm just, merrily swimming through the Degenesis pools at the moment, which may require some form of bleaching after I get out of them. But it was almost overwhelming that there was so much there and freely available, and to that high standard that you rarely see without a massive price tag on it. Like I said, the books are limited run items, they're boutique items, they are of incredible quality. But if people don't want to get those, or if they can't afford to get those, having it all available in the digital format is just mind-numbing. It literally, I don't think there is another company that is doing what you're doing to the level you're doing it at. Full stop. There just is no other company doing that. And that's what blew me away. It was the care and dedication to the craft that was being taken, where it was, here is what we can do if you give us the ability to do it. And there's no cut corners. There's no, we'll skimp on this, or we'll maybe drop a few illustrations out to lower the cost or the page count. It was all done to such an exquisite degree. And for that, Simon is killing my bank balance. So thank you, Simon. But yeah, that's more or less, that's what
it was a really nice summary. I like it. I mean, like it obviously did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah,
dragged you in,
and hopefully people seeing this will be interested to experience it as well. Now, obviously, we haven't gone into much of the storyline or background, and there's a very good reason for that. People at home, because they've left their editor and one of the Six More Vodka team within easy reach of me here in Ireland. So he is going to be coming to the studio with a big pile of books, and we're going to sit down and talk about the story, the background, and the world of Degenesis. But if you are interested, you should definitely come across to the Degenesis website, sign up, and don't worry if you feel overwhelmed when you sign up, people, because you'll get a little email chain that just gently eases you in, going, you know where you want to start? You want to start with some stories. Here's some stories, and there they are. You can click on those. And then a couple of days later, once you've digested that, you get another little email. It's all beautifully leading you down the garden path until you're so far in, you can't see the road back. And unlike Hansel and Gretel, you probably haven't dropped rocks to find your path home. So you're now part of Degenesis. And this is how it goes. But Erwin and Marco, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to have a chat with you. And hopefully I get a chance to speak to you again soon, and we see where Degenesis goes over the course of time.
Absolutely. Like, whenever you need us, have a lot of fun with Liam. That's going to be a good one. He's a gem.
I intend to. If people at home have any questions for you, drop them below and I shall pass them across to the guys, and hopefully they'll find an answer. Or you can sign up to their Discord and then just torment them in person. So until then,
we're there all the time.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, bye-bye.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.